For the last 3 decades, Knowledge Center at Bursa has offered technology, resources, services, space, and a sense of community. Since 1985, 14,000 titles have been collected, with care and attention to high financial literacy standards. In collaboration with a global community of institutions, we ensure access to the world's diverse intellectual and cultural economic heritage, as well as fast online services for connectivity to the financial world. Serving the Bursa Malaysia community and beyond, Knowledge Center at Bursa empowers you in your trading and investment analysis research.
Financial information at my fingertips.
Visit Knowledge Center at Bursa Malaysia today for the collections, for the services, for the sense of community.
You have suffered financial loss while investing, and you think your bank, broker, fund management company, unit trust management company, PRS provider or distributor, or their agent or representative is responsible. You need help sorting out the problem or want to seek redress. Where do you go? Sidrek is here to help you start the conversation and reach some resolution. First, lodge a formal complaint with a company that sold or offered you the unit trusts, shares, derivatives, or other capital market product or service. But you're not happy with their response. You have 180 days from their final written reply to come to Sidrek. Or if there's no written response, and it's been 90 days since you wrote to them, you don't need to wait longer. You may come to Sidrek even though you haven't received a final response yet. Sidrek first checks the eligibility of your claim. For example, is it within Sidrek's claim limit? Is it against a member of Sidrek? And so forth. If your case is eligible, we begin the dispute resolution process. All information in this process is confidential. We get both you and the member you're complaining against to sit with us and have a conversation. Documents and information will be required from both parties. No lawyers are allowed in the mediation process, as we keep the discussions informal and private. Our mediators are impartial and will hear both sides out and help parties communicate constructively towards resolving the dispute. Two outcomes are possible at this stage. Either both you and the member agree to a settlement, or you don't. If the both of you agree to a settlement, an agreement is signed and the mediation process ends successfully. But if both you and the member fail to reach a satisfactory resolution, mediation has thus failed. But don't worry, Sidrek then proceeds to the next stage, adjudication. During adjudication, parties are given the chance to provide any further information to help their case and ask each other further questions. Our adjudicator will then study and consider all facts and information provided, including the conduct of the parties, laws, and best industry practices, as well as what's fair and reasonable. Sidrek's adjudicator will then make a final decision on the dispute and the monetary claim. If the decision is in your favor, it could be a full award or a partial award for your claim. But if the decision isn't in your favor, then no award will be made. You, the investor, will still have a choice. If you reject the decision, Sidrek will simply close the case and you may seek other legal avenues for redress. If you choose to accept the decision, however, the member has to comply with it. Once the parties have confirmed compliance to the decision, Sidrek will close the case. So let Sidrek help start the conversation towards resolution. For more information, visit sidrek.com.my or call 03 2282 2280.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar brought to you by Bursa Malaysia and managed by LifeChamp. Today, our webinar's title is Behavioral Finance. How do you stand in your way of successful investing? So welcome to this webinar. My name is Shane Chu. I'm the moderator for this session. So as you know, investors, we all have behavior because as human beings, we have our emotions, we have our plans, but sometimes we let our plans to get in our way when it comes to executing our trading or investing plan. Okay, because our emotions get into the way and distort all our trading plan and trade ideas. So today we are going to study how we ourselves are the enemy of our trading plan and how we can improve our emotions, mastery, emotional management, and then what are some of the behavioral finance and also psychological bias that an investor may have when it comes to investing. So disclaimer, whatever we share on this webinar is only for educational purpose. In no way that we give you any recommendation for you to buy or sell any listed securities that we mentioned here. So if you decide to make any investment decisions, you're 100% responsible for all your investment risks. So allow me to briefly introduce our speaker. And he graduated with a bachelor degree in finance and investment. He is passionate in investment banking and have completed the CFA level 3 examination. So he also worked as a relationship manager for a bank. He has over 5 years of investing experience. We will focus on trading Malaysian and US stocks, commodities, and index futures, applying fundamental and technical analysis. He has 1 year of experience teaching students for over 500 students. So he's also an expert in wealth management and financial planning. So it's none other than Mr. Debo Chua. So welcome to this session, Debo.
Hello, right. Thank you, Shane, man. Thank you, Shane, for having me here.
Yeah, good to have you here again. So let me hand over the control to you.
All right. Okay, let me share the screen right now. Okay. So I share my screen right now. It's at this learning outcomes slides here. So I believe everyone here can see the screen very clearly. So if you do have like problem for the screen and all this thing, feel free to just voice it out in the chat box. Okay. So good evening, everyone. So today we'll talk about behavioral finance. Okay. So as Shane introduced it very well, in the journey of investing, a lot of times we do have a lot of this problem and issues. Okay, besides from just picking the right stocks or making a right trading strategy and all these things, the one thing that actually stops us from having a successful investment, it's always ourselves. Okay, so the common enemies that everyone has is always ourselves. So that is what it's all about for this today's sections. So for this today's sections, we will talk about the first thing first is what is behavioral finance. Okay, so we'll talk about very briefly on what are the key component of behavioral finance, and then we also talk about the importance of behavioral finance in in the investing journey. Okay, how important it is when you just having your own battle to just accumulate some more wealth and all this stuff. And also we'll talk about the common biases. Okay, so these are the key component that we talk about most of the time. Okay, this is the main ingredient of this today's learning outcomes. Okay, so from this you will then at the end of the day, you're able to know more about yourself, and also you are able to get an idea as well. How can you control it at the very least, making your investment highest possibility to success. Okay, and then we also learn, as I said just now, how to take an effective steps to avoid such common biases. And then the last one, then we have the right investment approach, to really kickstart your own investment journey and all this stuff. Okay. So we move on to the first learning outcome, is that what is this behavioral finance? Okay, in short, we call it BF. Okay, it's not boyfriend, it's behavioral finance. Okay, so keep in mind on that. So behavioral finance, if we make it short, it's actually the component of finance and psychology add up together. So the middle part, the combination of these two will then become behavioral finance. Okay, so this thing, it actually explains how people make irrational investment decisions. Okay, so you got to pay attention on this thing. I call it how people make irrational investment decisions. It's not about how people talk about irrational investment. Okay, so there's a very big difference between make and talk. Okay, so most of the time people do talk about rational investment. So when people talk about investment, they always come up with very valid reason, valid all this view and perspective. It sounds like they were always having this very good ideas and perspective and all this stuff. But at the back of them, at the back of all those reasons, are those people really make the right and the rational investment? So these are the things that you can actually ask yourself. Okay, in the journey of your investing journey, right? When you talk about this finance and all this stuff, it's usually really confusing, because in this stock market, it acts as like a casino, okay, like a casino, okay. So you will be very confusing, you will be very confusing because you do not know whether your own decision is whether the right one or whether the wrong one. So it's always like just gambling in the casino. So most of the time it will be very confusing, okay? But only a few people able to do so where they only look at the probability of winning and losing. Then from there, they're able to control on themselves. But I will tell you, most of the time, 90% of the people, they will be very confusing on their own behavior, okay? As just like normal people, for example, I ask them, what do you eat? What have you eaten last week? They would definitely say, I forgot. So it will be the same thing as well in this stock market investing. It's like, what kind of decision you decided when you try to make this investment move? For example, whether to cut loss, whether to average down, whether to just hold it for long term and all the stuff. So some people, they do not really have a clear picture or a very rational reason behind it. Okay, but most of the time they will just be like based on their own behavior or based on their own emotion, okay, or based on their own feeling. Even when they talk about it, they will just give you a very good reason to just back up their action. Okay, so in order to understand ourselves better, okay, in order to understand our better, okay, in order for you to able to succeed in the stock market, you will have to know yourself, okay, before you defeating others. Okay, so it's always like this because this thing is always important because you have to know to control on your own action, okay, able to control your own action and able to control your own mindset as well. Then only from that, you're able to minimize the risk of making mistakes, okay, the risk of making wrong decision, and then that will lead to losses, something like that. Okay, so behavioral finance, back to this BF, these terms. Okay, the importance of BF, it's always about knowing yourself. Okay, so after this, we will talk about what are the common this irrational behavior that people usually do, which they're actually having a really it's an obstacle for them to able to move forward with their investment portfolio. Okay, so now we'll talk about what are the common biases. Okay, as I said, this is the main ingredient of this today's section. Okay, so what are the common biases, okay, for this behavioral finance? So to categorize it, we can categorize behavioral behavioral biases into two kind of categories. Okay, so the first one is cognitive biases. Okay, it means that the way that people actually look at things and how people actually analyze things differently, because for some people, perhaps there is a very classic picture where there is two persons standing right in front of each other's, and then there's a number. It can be 9, it can be 6, just down there on the floor. So the one at the left side, it will look at like a 6 or maybe like a 9, but the other one will then be looking at the different things. Okay, so other than the others one. So this is what we call cognitive biases, meaning to say the way that people look at the same thing differently. Okay, whereby we all have different kind of analytical skills. Okay, we all have different kind of analytical skills. We all have different level of understanding, and that is the main thing. That is the main problem that actually causes this cognitive biases. Okay, so this is what we call cognitive biases, the first category. All right, and then for the second one, it's called emotional biases. Okay, emotional biases. Okay, so as the word define itself, emotional biases, meaning to say, these kind of biases, it actually come from this impulse, intuitions, and also feelings, okay, which we usually just get like the sixth sense things, okay, like the sixth sense things, you know. So this, to be honest, it's not like you can be explained in terms of analytical skill, in terms of facts, in terms of figures, numberings, you know, it is not explainable with all this stuff, okay, whereby it only can be said as, you know, it's just a feeling. It's just a feeling that I want to do this and I want to do that. So for this kind of emotional biases, it is the most difficult one for you to change. Okay, most of the people, they are struggling the most on this emotional biases. Okay, so this is the main problem that, you know, if you somehow you find yourself having this emotional bias, you will have to find way to try to just control yourself more, and maybe perhaps try to avoid. That could be one of the ways as well if you want to go that extreme. But you know, if not, you will be very in a deep trouble, because most of the time, even it's a good company like Maybank, you will just having a bad execution, and eventually it leads to losses for your this investment portfolio. Okay, so now we will go through what are these biases. Okay, just now we talked about the categories. So right now we'll talk about the example of these biases. So here we have like 4 of the example. We'll talk through it. Okay, so the first one we'll have is this loss aversion. Okay, I'll explain it later. Okay, and then we also have this herding. Okay, riding on. You know, you can see this picture. You know, everyone is riding on. It's very fun. You know, like a roller coaster. All right, and then the other one we have like endowment bias. You know, a different view of valuations. Okay, and the last one we have this overconfidence bias. Okay, so we'll talk through this later. Yeah? Okay, so the first emotional bias is this loss aversion. Okay, loss aversion. Okay, so loss aversion, this kind of a emotional bias, it's very common among retailers. Okay, among retail investors, it is very common. Most of the time, like 10 of the retail investors, you can find like 5 to like 7 of them, they will have this kind of bias. Okay, what are this kind of bias? This bias is actually means that this investor, if let's say this investor, they have this, he has this loss aversion bias, it means that he actually hates losses so much that he actually overwhelms the love for gain. Okay, so I'll repeat it. So it actually hates losses so much that it overwhelms the love for gain and never cut losses. Okay, so these kind of investors, they never cut losses. Okay, they never cut losses. So perhaps I'll give you an example, a real life example on how these investors will actually react. Okay, most of the time, these investors, let's say they are actually trading on very speculative stocks. Okay, like they heard from their friends, or maybe, you know, on the internet and all this stuff. They learned that some of these particular stocks, they will have this big news, you know, like coming up big, and the stock price will skyrocket and all this stuff. So from there, you know, this investor somehow he just got excited, and then he just bought the stocks. And then at the end of the day, somehow this so-called news, or so-called, you know, information, it's actually spread all around the country and all this stuff, you know. So somehow people just sell it as he buys. Okay, so eventually the price is actually at a high price, so he bought it at a high price, and at the end of the day he got pretty huge paper losses. Okay, so at this point of time, when these investors when he sees this scenarios, when he sees this situations, right, his reaction is like he will be thinking, saying, it's okay lah, I will just hold the stocks, probably like for a year or maybe 10 years. I will just wait, I'll just wait until it just comes back up lah. And then from there, I will not have the losses. So when you yourself speak this kind of words, or when you hear someone speak this kind of word, immediately you will just take this kind of person. They have this loss aversion bias. Okay, so they are the people that they never cut loss because they always believe that their stocks will just come back no matter what kind of stock they hold. Okay, they will just think that as long as I don't cut it, as long as I don't realize my paper losses, I'm not in the losing side. Okay, so they are the one that actually not accepting the reality. Okay, they just hold it on and forever, And for this kind of actions, if you want to dive it even deeper, you're able to understand this kind of action it's actually very bad for an investment approach, because you actually have an amount of capital stuck inside this failed investment. Okay, so this is what we call loss aversion biases. Okay, so this is very classic. Okay, as I face my clients, most of my clients, like retail investors, a lot of them, like tons of them, are having such biases. They will always just tell me this kind of classic words, saying that I'd rather just hold on it, I don't care, I never cut losses and all that stuff. Okay, so this is the first emotional bias that we have. Okay. Okay, the second emotional bias is this overconfidence bias. Okay, like this picture, as you can show, is actually skinny, not looking that tough, but in his mind, back on his shoulders, in the shadows, he thinks that he's very big, he is very strong and all this stuff. Okay, so as the term it explains, so these kind of persons, they think they themselves are bigger, probably even bigger than the market itself. So this kind of persons, this kind of investors, what kind of words will they use? What kind of words will they speak? They always say such things. Like, for example, they will say that I 100% confirm, this banking stock will outperform in this coming half year. He's 100%, and then he all in everything. His portfolio, probably like 100,000. He will just all in into banking stuff. Okay, probably Maybank, 60% of it, then 30% of it goes into public bank again, something like that. So these are the classic action that this kind of overconfidence people does. Okay, so you're able to understand that from this kind of a situation, it is very bad as well, because he actually doesn't care anything about risk management. Okay, so from there you're able to know that on this kind of bias, it will actually cause his portfolio to have a very, very huge volatility. Okay, it can either go big or go home. Okay, probably maybe they don't have home as well. They probably can lose the home as well. They can go all the way like that. Okay, so overconfidence bias, it's a very, very bad. I would say it's a very, very bad bias as well. And most of the time, you can say they would just be like thinking they are the one that having the smartest mind in the room or in the world or something like that. So these are the biases you should really verify on your own and stuff like that. Okay, and most of the time when someone has this kind of bias, you will be very sensitive to them as well. Okay, like for example, I'll give an example. Like if let's say one of my friends, when I talk to them and I found out that he actually has this kind of overconfident bias. Then when I told him, I say, hey, bro, you might need to think about this factor and that factor. But then he will just he will just don't care, say that no, I actually calculated it. I can confirm it will be coming as what I thought, as what I analyzed, something like that. So they will be very defensive against others people opinion. Okay, so these are the characteristic of these biases. Okay, and then the third emotional biases is what we call this herding. Okay, herding. Okay, what does this mean? As you can see the picture here. Okay, they are follow people blindly. Okay, they are follow people blindly, even when it comes to the end of the cliff. Okay, so it will be a very bad ending for all of them. Okay, so this third emotional bias, it actually means that it is the classic fear of missing out. Okay, they will just be following the crowd. Okay, because they actually they want to avoid being left out. Okay, for example, when we were, for example, when let's say when you just hang out with a friend, okay, all of them, they're having their own finance background, they're having their own finance mindset and all this stuff. And then when they were talking about, a particular stuff, a particular stocks, and then somehow all of them were just saying that, hey, I invest this as well. So you yourself that actually didn't invest in that stocks, somehow, if you have this kind of bias, you feel that, if am I missing out something? Am I missing out this stock? Whether it has some very, very good perspective and all this stuff. So should I just follow them? Oh, yeah, I should just follow them. So I just buy together with them. So that is the classic FOMO, what we call FOMO, herding, okay, as the action goes. Okay, so this kind of bias, it will be their portfolio, this kind of investors, their portfolio will be it will be very bad as well, as they always don't care about their own allocation. Okay, there will be some of the stocks will be over concentrated and all these things. So eventually, it will be causing them to not have any idea about their own investment. So this kind of biases is kind of bad as well, because it shows that this investor, they don't really have this mindset, the right mindset, whether they are buying the right stocks or anything. They just follow people. Okay, something like that. So they don't care about their average cost. They don't even know like whether when do they cut loss, or when do they just add up, top up to average down and all this stuff. They don't even know about it. So these investors, it will be very bad as well. Okay. And the fourth emotional bias, this is the last emotional bias that we talked for today. Okay, it's called endowment bias. Okay, endowment bias. So this endowment bias, as the picture shows, you can see like the same cup, okay, which this cup is not mine cup, it's actually priced at 2 ringgit 87 cents. Okay, 2 ringgit 87 cents, probably in the one of the window in this shopping mall. Okay, but if, for example, the same cup that actually bought by my father, okay, and he actually gave it to me, saying that this cup this cup is very dear to me and all this stuff. And then right now my father, perhaps let's say for example, he just moved out to a very far place and all this stuff. Then this is the cup that somehow just makes me think of it. Okay, makes me think of it. And it's always makes me, just kind of like miss him and all this stuff. So in my own perspective, I view this cup as like 7 ringgit and 12 cents. 7 ringgit and 12 cents. So different value compared to what it is selling at the shopping mall. Okay. So this kind of biases is what we call, you hold on something too tight that you actually think that the object value higher than this market value itself. Okay, so this is what we call like endowment bias. Okay, so if I would like to put it into a real life example, this kind of biases, it will always happen on family, like they have their own business, they actually build out their own business and go listed and all this stuff. So most of the time, the owner itself, they will own their own stocks as well, right? So perhaps let's say you open up a company. Let's say you open up Maybank. Let's say Maybank is your company. Okay, so the valuation in this stock markets, in this Bursa, is actually right now it's like 8 ringgit something, right? So right now it's 8 ringgit. But when you put on on the owner's perspective, they will think that because this bank is my own blood and sweat, So, I actually built it like 10, 50 years or something like that. So it's from my grandfather's side until now today, I own it, something like that. So I reviewed it, actually, the value is like 15 ringgit or 18 ringgit, that high level valuation. So that is the very big difference, compared to what it sells in the market and compared to my valuation in my mind. Okay, and this is actually something that is not because I think that the valuation of the business, it has this potential, but it's much more like because I have emotional attach on these valuations. Okay, so that is why we say that this is called this endowment bias. Okay, it always happens to like business owner, or maybe like when someone pass away, and then they have this legacy planning, pass on their stock portfolio to their sons and to their grandsons and all this stuff. So when they think back how their father talked about stock market to them, they'll just feel that, oh, I this kind of stock, it reminds me my father, and I would not like to sell the stock for this price and something like that. It always happens in this kind of occasion. Okay. Okay, now we talked about, we have already talked about emotional bias. Okay, now we will move into the second category, cognitive bias. Okay, so for this cognitive biases, right, it's, as I said, it's like this, what do you call, this, the idea, the idea of different analytical skills, okay, different level of understanding that actually blocks you from, knowing all the right stuff that you should actually know. Okay, like this, just like this classic picture here, like this guy actually thinks that it's number 6, but this guy here looking at the numbers, he thinks that it's actually number 9. So the same thing here, somehow it has very, very different view, from both of them. Okay, so this is what we call cognitive bias, because it's different because of the level of understanding as well as the level of analytical skills and all this stuff. And perhaps it's always about like their analytical skills. It has error in it. Okay, it has error in it. Okay, the way that they view things, it's very different, compared to other people, and that differences, it makes them pay. Okay, it makes them pay for their losses. Okay, so what kind of cognitive biases did we have? Okay, so we will talk about 5 cognitive biases here. Okay, the first one will be the anchoring bias. Okay, the second one will be the hindsight. Okay, this is a very classic cognitive bias. Okay, and then the third one will be framing bias. Okay, this is also a very good one. Okay, in fact, it helps people to somehow convince you in certain things and all this stuff like that. Okay, and then the fourth one will be like representative, and then at the end, like confirmation bias. Okay, so we'll go through it one by one. Okay, the first one we'll talk about is representativeness bias. Okay, what kind of a bias is this? Okay, this bias is, it actually means this. Okay, to put it in a simple way, it actually means that when an investor, they look at a specific company past records, right? They look at their historical performance, like for example, how they performed in 2015 until 2021. Okay, so when they look at those kind of performance, they see that, oh wow, this company is actually making really good growth, throughout all this period, maybe like 5 years, 6 years, and then somehow they would just have this thinking saying that, hey, if this company can do so well, they can do it so well, that means they probably will do it again in the future, So, but if we look at this statement plainly, right? Okay, you'll find that this statement, it's wrong. Okay, it's wrong. It's a wrong statement, because you never know what will happen in the future. Okay, you never know, because like for example, I always heard people saying, like saying that 2020 we have COVID, Okay, and then saying back like, you know, when back then we have all these flu things, it's like 15 years, something like that. And then they will just make a statement saying like every 15 years, we will definitely have a pandemic stuff and something like that, you know, and they will just make statement like this. But when you just look at it plainly on the reality, you will just figure out, and then something like such pandemic happening doesn't have anything to do with a timeline. You know, it doesn't have any relationship at all with the timeline, saying like, you know, 15 years has passed, so definitely there must be some pandemic coming out, you know, things like this. So, and then the gloves companies, the glove counters will just go up. No, this statement is so wrong because it actually just based on historical performance saying that it will definitely happen in this future. Okay, so such representative bias is actually having a very faulty thinking, okay, thinking that the past performance will definitely repeat in the future. Okay, so this is like the first representative bias, the first cognitive bias. You know, I always see a lot of retail investors, they always have this thinking, you know, they will just buy a strong company saying like, you know, they are blue chip stocks, okay, but anyhow, blue chip stock, we are looking at the fundamental, the prospect of it, the future prospect of it. If this blue chip stock, it is right now at a tough situation, it will not perform as well. It will not perform in the future, no matter how good they perform in the past. Okay, so this is what we call a cognitive bias. Okay, a representativeness bias. Okay, so the second cognitive bias we'll talk about is this confirmation bias. Okay, this is also a very classic one. As I would most of the time when I talk about this thing with my fellows clients and fellows friends, I always see this kind of bias in them as well. What is this bias? This actually means that these investors, the investors that have this confirmation bias, they will actually look at the fact that actually confirms their belief. Okay? They will only look at the facts that actually just confirm their belief. Okay, and the second part is like they will ignore the others part of the fact that somehow it's different compared to their own belief. Okay, so what does it mean? Okay, so to put it simply, it's almost like this picture. It's like this is what I see, what I think, what a particular stock will perform in the future. Okay, and this is the fact that it actually present in the market. Okay, like the information, the valuation, you know, the PE ratio, the debts, the, you know, all this stuff, the margin and all this stuff. But no matter how this facts actually present, I will just look at the facts that actually support my own belief. Okay, so that is confirmation bias. So if I put it like this way, let's say we talk about this classic glove companies, right? Most of the people, they will just say, you know, glove company, it's good lah. You know, you know, they have very good cash flow. You know, they have a lot of cash. Right now, their pricing is at the pre-pandemic side. You know, they earn so much cash right now. Definitely, the price is going good. You know, all this stuff. But somehow these investors actually ignore a large part of objective facts to them. Okay, that actually against their own belief. Okay, so they will just ignore like what kind of stuff, like for example, the supply and demand issue. For example, right now a lot of glove right now in the market. So they will say that no, this thing just it will go, it will normalize in the future. You know, like the supply will just be right now stagnant, but the demand will definitely comes up. But who knows? You know, who knows? Because are you that sure that the medical demand will, you know, increase for the glove and all this stuff? So what kind of a justification you use, what kind of a justification you present, you know, to support your things? They will then say that, you know, only looking at, oh no, now you see this is the fact one, you know, most of the time happens. So these are the classic example of confirmation bias. Okay, so if you have this kind of a confirmation bias, okay, you have to think back how to make decisions when you invest. Okay, if you have this kind of confirmation bias, it's always good to just take a time and just step one step back. Okay, take a step back, and then just rethink about your own strategy or your own proposal. Okay, just think about what are the risks and what are the downside potential that it actually present in the market and all this stuff. So these are the classic effective steps that I would say it is very good to just counter on this confirmation bias. Okay. And then the third cognitive bias, okay, this is also a very classic one. This is what we call a hindsight bias. Okay, it always comes with this classic statement saying that I knew that stock was going to rise. I believe some of you might, occasionally, you might say such statements. When some of the stocks goes up, you say that I knew it goes down, I knew it goes up. Stuff like that. So this is what we call hindsight bias. Okay, so this bias is it is also one of the cognitive bias. It's because to be honest, when you look at this statement, is that really true that you knew the stock will goes up? No. So is that really true? Because if you knew that the stock will go up, you will definitely make action on it. You definitely make action on it. You will not just say such word and then just let the stock, miss out the opportunity and all this stuff. So most of the time, people that say these words, right? They always they actually have this wrong thinking that they knew this thing, they knew that one, but it's a wrong one. It's a wrong idea or perspective because you never know such thing. Okay, you never know such thing because you don't really know when the stuff goes up or when this information, how you interpret it until the stock market reacts on it. Then only you have this supporting perspective, supporting view to just put up into your own decision. So this kind of a cognitive bias, it's a wrong way of thinking. It's a wrong way of looking at things. Okay, so if you don't fix this kind of a biases, you will be very trouble as well because you'll miss out a lot of potential risks. You'll be exposing yourself to potential losses and stuff like that. Okay. Okay, the fourth cognitive bias will be anchoring bias. Okay, anchoring bias is it's almost like the first biases we talk about, the representativeness bias. Okay, it means that you actually holding on this kind of idea or holding on the first or preferable piece of information when you make decision. Okay, so it's almost like representative bias. Okay, but representative bias will be just based on the past performance. Okay, but for this one, anchoring bias, you are just holding on the first information, something like this. Okay, so if I like to give an example, it's like for example, the technology stocks. Okay, the technology stocks. Okay, so as you know, at the moment right now, technology stock is very bad at the moment. The prospect is changing at the moment. So their valuation, their share price goes down a lot and all this stuff. But when you find some of the technology investors, okay, when you ask them, what's your view on this technology prospect? So they will always say that, technology, it's good lah. I don't think it will be bad because I think that this semiconductor sales is still very good. I think it will just shoot up in a short period of time and all this stuff. Okay, so this kind of thinking, it can be wrong as well because the thing is whether have you updated your own piece of information? Are you looking at the right information saying that semiconductor is still going strong and strong? It doesn't have anything to come down yet. It is still strong despite all this interest rate going up and all this stuff. Okay, so this is the biases that actually blocking your understanding to view a different perspective. Okay, so that is why this is what we call anchoring bias. You have blocked your mindset to actually just receive more information. You will just anchor on the first or preferred piece of information when you just make the decision to buy on that technology stocks. Okay. Okay. The last one that we talk about, this cognitive bias, is this framing bias. Okay, this is also a very classic one, which as you can see the picture here, the same frozen yogurt, okay, the left side here, it actually writes here, contains 20% fat. Okay, but the right side here, the same frozen yogurt, it the meaning is saying that 80% fat-free. Okay, so when you look at these two products, right, you think that, hey, somehow this 80% fat-free, it means good, it means that means 80% fat-free. You know, I'm eating a very good healthy food. You know, but you know the product is literally the same thing. It's just different way of presenting it. Okay, putting up 80% fat-free, so you think that it's good. Okay, but this one, when it puts out like 20% fat, you look at the fat thing, you say that, oh, it's fat, you know, it will cause me to go obesity, you know. So I want this, I take the healthy one, but at the end of the day, it's the same product. Okay, so this is what we call framing bias. Okay, so such information is also such biases is also very common, okay, in the stock market, because as you can see, you know, there's a lot of information going on every day in the stock market. Okay, so it is also the way that it presented. So when people have this framing bias, right, they will have to change their way of thinking. Okay, they will have to look at information on a wholesome basis, okay, to look at things comprehensively, something like that. Okay, so in order to change this framing bias, you have to practice. Okay, you have to practice. Okay, to learn to analyze, analyze comprehensively, something like that. Okay. Okay, so from there we already talked all of these common biases, you know, in this stock markets. Okay, I'm sure some of you perhaps, you know, somehow you have this same feelings. Hey, I did this or I did that, you know, something like that. But so right now we'll talk about like, right now you already identify your own biases. So right now you look at how do you just take effective steps to try to control or, you know, avoid losses. Okay, try to control your bias, you know. So first thing first, I will say that most of the investors, as I said, the retail investors, most of them, they have very dangerous emotional bias. As I mentioned, a few of them just now, like overconfidence, you know, this loss aversion. You know, these two are the classic, most dangerous biases that people can have. So for them, it is best for them to trade less and invest more. Okay, because for them, most of the time, if let's say you ask them to trade, right, just one single counter, let's say it's somehow not up to their expectation, then if you have this loss aversion bias, the one that you actually hate losses, you don't want to cut loss at all, so it will be very bad because you are not following your own discipline anymore. Because when you see this stock loss, you say that no, I think it will just rebound, you know. I see this support line, I think okay. But at the end of the day, it's coming down, it's just coming down, it just keep coming down and coming down. And then at the end of the day, instead of making a disciplined 5% cut loss point, somehow you just suffer up a 15 or maybe 30% cut loss for trading. And that is very, very bad for traders, you know, to take up that much of losses. Okay, so for them, most of the time, just trade less, invest more rather. Okay, put your investment horizon longer, so you will avoid making that much of a decision. Okay, because the more decision you make, then the higher the possibility for you to just make the wrong action. Okay, so that is the first effective step to actually for you to control your behavior. Okay, and then the second steps, it's like, this is for like those kind of herdings, or, you know, for representative biases or cognitive biases, some of the cognitive biases, okay, is to just avoid crowded trades. Okay, avoid crowded trades. Okay, because as this picture shows, a crowded trade, it will always lead up to very high expectation, a very high expectation. Okay, and that high expectation, it will mean a very high risk. Okay, so the high risk will then eventually gives you a very large potential losses at the end of the day. Okay, so all times, just try to avoid crowded trades. Okay, I've seen this a lot of times. You know, a lot of my retail investors, when they look at like a classic example like CTOS, when CTOS goes public last year, okay, the stock market just went crazy. You know, for a single day, stocks were trading so freaking high volume, and everyone just is just rushing up to just buy that stocks. Okay, it goes up, it goes up. You know, it goes up like 2 ringgit, but right now you can see the pricing. It comes out to 1 ringgit and 10 cents. Okay, so you can imagine the losses there. It's like a huge losses. Okay, eventually they will pay the price when it goes when you just go and buy high expectation price, high expectation of stocks, and eventually it leads to a very high potential losses. Okay, so for most time, what you should do is always just analyze your stocks, okay, comprehensively, and then just avoid crowded trades. Okay, and there is an approach where I sometimes I will just use this kind of approach where if let's say I'm buying one of these speculative stocks, okay, and when I see that this speculative stocks it actually goes up to top volume of the stock market, I will just find some time to just sell it for the next couple of trading days, because that means that this particular counters, it actually got a lot of ice ball in the markets, and right now people are having a very high expectation on it. And when it comes down, it definitely comes out hard. I would rather sell it at the high side, just take my profit, no matter how petty of my return is at that moment. I'll just avoid it. So that is one of the classic approach that I can share to you guys to just avoid crowded trades. Okay. And then another classic steps is, of course, just as the last one saying, avoid herding. You should just, when you invest, you should always have your own thinking. Okay, try to have your own thinking, not to just follow people's perspective. Okay, when people talk about one particular stock, for example, when I talked to my client this morning, he actually gave me a very special reasoning when he buys a particular stock. He was saying that this stock, I heard that the owner of Old Town White Coffee, they bought this stock a lot. They bought this stock a lot. So when I say this kind of statements, right, people will then think that, oh, Old Town, I know this Old Town. Oh, that means probably this boss, he has this very good eyesight. Maybe he see things differently. I want to buy, but it's not that case, because if you understand it clearly, if you analyze it clearly, how big can this boss buy on these counters? Is it like 100 million? Is it like 500 million? No, definitely not. It's probably like buying what, like 5 million, something like that. So 5 million is like what? It's very small amount in this stock markets. So from there, you're able to analyze, saying that this statement is not that strong. If this information, this piece of information is trash, because it doesn't translate anything to me. Because it doesn't mean that this stock is good. No one is holding it very firmly and things like this. So that's why we should just avoid herding. Just follow on your own analysis. Okay, at the end of the day, you're able to learn something, rather than if you just follow others. At the end of the day, you learn nothing. Okay, and you take losses as well. Okay, and then also how can you take more effective steps to avoid? Okay, this is one of the things that I actually encourage people to think differently. Okay, when it comes to investing. Okay, so it's called contrarian investing. Okay, contrarian investing. Okay, meaning to say, like if I would like to give an example, let's say at the moment people think that there's a very classic example here right now at the moment, which is the plantation stocks. Okay, the plantation stocks. Okay, as I can see, the price of crude palm oil is coming down for the past 2 weeks. Okay, it's coming down sharp. Okay, from the price of near to 5,000 right now at the moment, it breaks to 3,000, something like that. And then somehow there are a lot of news or information flowing in the market saying that they still looking good okay, for plantation stocks, okay, for crude palm oil stocks, something like that. Okay, so if you just blindly follow this kind of information, then eventually you will be very troubled as well, because you will not having the right analysis, okay, onto what if CPO really just come down all the way, normalize, okay, like probably from right now at the moment like 4,002. What if for the next 6 months it comes down to like 3,005 or maybe 3,002? So from there you see that a lot of plantation stock will then in very big trouble, because that price is not that attractive anymore, okay, and their stock price at the moment is at the high side, okay, their valuation is at the high side, okay, so there must be price coming down on that point of time, okay. So on that basis, what kind of a risk should you identify? Okay, what kind of risk should you identify? Perhaps like plantation, they will have a very high production season for the next 6 months. Okay, so this is one of the risks in this plantation sectors. Okay, and when you have high productions for CPO, then your inventories will go high as well. So that is the key thing that actually affect your CPO price, and the CPO price will then eventually affect the plantation company, because they are selling at the lower selling price. Okay, so this is what we call contrarian investing. Instead of just following people saying that, okay, they think that the plantation is good, the plantation is good. Okay, you should just think differently, think in a different way. Okay, just think that what are the potential risks? Okay, what are the potential risks that I actually miss? Okay, try to come out with different kind of objective and see how your investment approach can just counter such objection of stuff. Okay, so this is one of the very effective way. Most of the time I use it when I was thinking about some of this decision as well. Okay, just to avoid you to make big losses. Okay, when it goes to investing. Okay, so right now we talk all of this behavioral finance. Okay, we have talked most of it. Okay, all of it. Okay, like what are the categories, what are the biases, what are the examples, what are the ways for you to just control it. Okay, to avoid it, something like that. Okay, so right now we'll just talk briefly about how can you train yourself, okay, to have this right investment approach. Okay, when you go for your investment journey. Okay, so most of the time I'll tell my fellows, friends, they should always, the first thing first they should do is that they should always make investment journal. Okay, they should always make investment journal, meaning to say they should always mark down their action, what kind of a price they bought, what kind of strategy they use. Okay, like for example, a particular stock, let's say you are bullish on this Maybank stocks. Okay, so when you look at Maybank stocks, are you like 70% bullish, or like very sure like 80 to 90%? Okay, so you should just write down your expectation. Okay, so if you are bullish, what kind of price you are looking at, how much this Maybank stock will grow and all this stuff. Okay, you should look at that way. Okay, and then also you should just drop down your strategy as well. Okay, like let's say you are looking at Maybank. Okay, or you want to just buy in the Maybank, you want to invest into Maybank. So if let's say you are very sure, are you going to just put up everything into it? Are you going to just 100% just put up into it? Okay, like if you want to put up 10,000 into it, you want to just all in 10,000 into it, or are you going to split like perhaps 3 times or maybe 4 times? So every time you just get like 2,500 into Maybank stocks, things like this. Okay, so this is the strategy. Okay, you should always make investment journal to mark down your strategy. So by the end of the day, when it comes back to whether you want to revalue your investment approach, or whether you have a certain uncertainty, okay, whether like Maybank stock is coming down, it's not up to your expectation. So you can come back to this investment journal, and then you can look at your decision. Okay, from there you're able to understand how can you execute for the next step, and then just try to save, or perhaps like try to cut loss as soon as possible for your investment. Okay, so this is the first action that I would actually suggest to my fellow friends for the right investment approach. Okay, so and then this thing is also the same thing. Like you should always make investment expectation, like what kind of a price to cut loss and what kind of a price to take profit. Okay, if it hits it. Okay, so whether it's a hard rule, when it reach this price, you just cut loss straight away without any rooms to reconsider or stuff like that, or whether it's a soft cut loss. When it comes to this price, you will just reevaluate, thinking like perhaps there is a room for me to just look at it differently. Perhaps that it's because of market noise, making the price coming down, and I'm not afraid of things like that. So these are the expectations. You should just drop it down on your investment journey. Okay, and then of course, the last approach is that you should also retest every arrow. Okay, you should mark down your mistake on every trade. Okay, so it's like, for example, let's say right now you think that Maybank is going good, you bought it, but somehow it doesn't come to your expectation. The price is coming down, you're taking losses. So when you reevaluate, okay, you find that, oh, that's actually one of this potential risks I missed at the beginning of time. So what is your next strategy? Okay, the next strategy, I will just cut loss. Okay, once you cut loss, you make one mistake already, mark down your mistake. What kind of mistake is this? What kind of risk you actually somehow miss, when you make the decision? Okay, so for the next investment decision, you will then able to learn, whether is this your cognitive bias, or is this your emotional bias that actually blocks you, stops you from making such the right approach, or stuff like this. So it's always just mark down your mistakes on every trade, so you're able to learn. Okay, continuously. Okay, you're able to learn continuously. Then only you're able to make your investment consistently to make it a success in the long run. Okay, so this is the right approach that I believe all retail investors should have, okay, when they are battling during their investment journey. Okay, so that is the end of my presentation. Okay, so I will now pass on the floor to Shane to open up the Q&A section.
All right, thank you so much, Debo, for sharing with us the behavioral finance, how we stand in our way of successful investing. And if I think a lot of us here have learned many more emotional biases and many more cognitive biases that you have just shared. All right, so if any questions for our speakers, please write in the Q&A box, not the chat box, so we can easily manage it. Yeah, write your questions in the Q&A box so we can address your questions. Okay.
I think there's a question in the chat box. I can see there's one question there.
Yeah, what is the main economic factor that influence investor decision to sell off their holding shares?
What is the main economic factors that influence investors' decision to sell off their holding shares? Okay, for these questions, right? Okay, this is an interesting one. So this student, it's not about this student. Also, it's like a lot of times we have this idea saying like perhaps this the main economy, like perhaps there could be one of the finance factors that actually makes people sell off their holding shares. But in reality, I'll tell you, the decision when they make a buy call, a sell call, if you look at it plainly, you always find that people are trading or investing their shares on expectation. They will have their own different expectations. Okay, so meaning to say, expectation means that expectation doesn't mean facts. Expectation doesn't mean facts. It doesn't mean that in the future it will definitely happens like this. So for that particular reason, I think that if you talk about the main economic factors that actually influence investor decision, I can't really just categorize it like saying that there are these indicators, and that can this. No, it's most of the time it's just people look things differently. Okay, but I will say this. Okay, there are some of these economic indicators that you can actually look at to see how people think of the market at the moment. Okay, you can see how the people think of the market in the moment, whether it is very bearish or whether it is very bullish. Okay, so this is one of the good indicators that I think that it can, you know, couple up with your own equipment, couple up with your own weapons, you know, to just fine tune your own investment strategy. Because I will tell you this, like for example, when people have very bearish sentiment in the markets, that actually means that stocks is actually being sold crazily. So with that saying, you know that, you know, there must be some stocks in discount at the moment. And for you to, what you should do next is just to analyze and to find that a discount stock and for you to earn in that moment.
All right. So of course, let's write your question in Q&A box here, not the chat box. Write them in Q&A box. So the next question is, does behavioral finance impact only the individual?
Behavioral finance impact the individual? I would say no, because to be honest, behavioral finance, this theory, these things, it doesn't just impact only the individual. Okay, it impacts the whole entire market, to be honest. Okay, it's just that when we talk about behavioral finance on individuals, okay, then we talk about that, those kinds of biases. That means biases. But if we talk about on the whole market itself, so the whole market itself, it adds up the institutional investors, it adds up the, you know, hedge fund manager and all this stuff. Because you got to understand, they, at the end of the day, they are human as well. So definitely behavioral finance affects them. Okay, but when we talk about the whole market itself, we have a different term for it. So what we call that is called market anomalies. Okay, market anomalies. So meaning to say market anomalies, it means that some of this irrational scenes or irrational scenario, it happens, you know, and it actually doesn't make sense at all. You know, for example, perhaps some of you have heard before, like the December window dressing. This is some of the anomalies as well. Like people will just, because of this tax tax favor things, okay, they most of the time they will sell off their stocks during December time, and then on January time then to buy it back. Okay, this happens in the US. Like most of the time, on the end of the year, it will perform slightly worse, slightly bad. But at the beginning of the year, then somehow most of the stocks will go up, things like this. Yeah, so this is what we call like anomalies on the whole market level.
All right. How about you know, how a behavioral finance affecting a certain class? Is it affect certain class, or it affect, you know, beyond certain asset class?
Okay, behavioral finance, it definitely affect the other classes as well, because it doesn't just limit to a certain asset classes. You know, at the end of the day, it's us human have this behavioral finance. It's in our blood, it's in our own body, that actually having our own psychological problem that actually blocking us from making the investment succeed. So behavioral finance, definitely it will affect other asset classes as well. Okay, it will definitely affect the other classes as well. So most of the time you see, you know, for example, bond markets, it can come up with a very different idea or expectation compared to your own idea of finance knowledge and all this stuff. So yeah, it definitely affects the other classes as well.
All right. So how is the behavioral finance different from traditional finance? That's the next question.
Okay, this is a good one. Okay, so okay, behavioral finance, how it differs compared to traditional finance is that traditional finance is what we call it's what you learn. Okay, as being to say, like how when interest rate goes up, you know, stocks will come down and all this stuff, and bank will definitely go up and all this stuff. Traditional finance, sorry. So traditional finance, it always assume that, you know, the market will always act according to how we learn in the book. Okay, like if let's say it's high PE, definitely will come down, things like this. Okay, so it means that you will be very hard for you to somehow predict the stock market change. Okay, it will be hard for you to predict because traditional finance, it will just mean to say like the world is act like just a book, what the book taught us, something like that. But I would say the behavioral finance is when you learn about behavioral finance, it's more towards the real life, because that is actually how we do things, how we actually make our decision. When all these medias and all these newspapers, they keep on posting saying that the market is bad, recession. So people will then have like an idea saying that, hey, the market is bad, so I don't want to invest. But if you know about this behavioral finance, then you're able to twist your mindset, thinking that, hey, that means the market is having discount. So right now is the idea for me to get on it and then somehow buy on cheap stocks. Then you can able to earn more, something like that. So I would say traditional bias is always on the theory side, but behavioral finance, it's more like you're able to learn more about yourself. So as I see this chat box, I saw that people actually put it in a simple way, saying that behavioral finance is like an art. Okay, but the traditional bias is more like the science of the stock markets, something like that. Okay.
All right. Of course, I see that there are questions asking about stock trading ideas. Okay, for that we are not able to answer because our speaker is not a licensed investment advisor, so can't give any investment advice. So yes, not addressing any questions to ask which stocks to buy. Yeah. The next question is it better to invest in unit trusts that just beat the inflation?
And just beat the inflation. Okay. Definitely, I would say it's much more like so as we learned today, like behavioral finance, right? It is a very good thing that you come up with this question, because when we talk about behavioral finance, somehow you have to understand that what is your own circumstances that actually stops you from making a good investment approach or investment portfolio. So most of the time, if you talk about unit trust, I would say it's a very good thing. It's a very good investment vehicle as well, because if, let's say, for example, you are the person that actually having a lot of emotional bias, like this loss aversion, you are the one that do not love losses, you hate losses so much, so you don't want to cut loss. So I would say that it is best for you to just invest into unit trust, because when you invest into unit trust, then there will be professional helping you to manage on those kind of investments. Okay, they will just help you to manage your investment. So they help you to manage it. They help you to put it into a good way of it. So from there, you are able to avoid from making mistake because of these biases. Okay, so I would say most of the time, a lot of retail investors, they do not know this about themselves. Okay, so they are not aware they're having this kind of a biases. Okay, so some of the times it might be because just the lifestyle they're having, like maybe their job is like engineering job. It requires them to pay attention on other things rather than the stock market. So because of that kind of circumstances, it is very good for you to just invest in the unit trust, because since you don't have that much time to learn about analyzing the stock market, so might as well you just give it to the others to do the job for you. So definitely, I would say that unit trust is a very good investment vehicle. And then for the second part of the question, whether it's able to beat the inflation, I would say that definitely, because for unit trust, on long-term basis, it can yield like 8% to up to like 10% if you put it into right unit trust. And of course, if you're able to make a switch when it comes to the right time. Okay, like for example, if you're looking at the China stock right now, you think that China stock is good, and then let's say half a year later, you find that China stock is not that good anymore. You want to switch to other stocks, then if you're able to do so, or maybe someone else, the agent, were able to help you to do so, then you'll get a plus point for your investment approach as well.
All right. The next question is, in this volatile and uncertain bearish market Bursa, should an investor, especially a newbie, stay away from the market and to only make a move to invest when the market starts to rebound from the bottom?
Okay, this is a good one. Okay, so I think, okay, for this question, I would say, I wouldn't say like, you know, because it, at the end of the day, it can up to you, you know, whether to just you want to just buy the dip, or you know, whether you just want to see when it start to rebounding, then only you just go into the markets. It can just up to you, because there isn't any wrong, you know, for the two decision. Okay, but I will say it again, you know, it all comes down how much of effort you put it in. Okay, how much of effort and how much of the risk management you put it in. Okay, when you invest on particular stocks. Okay, like if I would like to give an example, like if you let's say right now interest rate is going up, right, and then there is an expectation thinking that the banking stock will outperform in the next 1 year and something stuff like this. Okay, so your effort will be then on stock picking. You have to look at what kind of bank stocks are they. Okay, and are you looking at the high risk bank stock, or are you looking at the, you know, conservative kind of bank stocks? Okay, so if you buy on the conservative one, okay, you think that is the one that, you know, able to help you to at least help to secure the principal more. So the next step would then be, how are you going to structure your investment? How are you going to, like, are you going to go in at one shot, or are you going to go in like 2 times, 3 times? Let yourself having more flexibility. Let's say if the price really does come down, you're able to have more capital to average down. So from that side, you have a lot of risk management. So from there, you know, it doesn't mean that buying the dip is the wrong thing, you know, because you already make up a good effort to control your risk. Okay, from there, it's a good thing for you. But at the end of the day, let's say coming back, since you are a newbie, if you are still afraid of, you know, making the wrong mistake, you can just wait. You can just wait for rebound. Okay, you can just wait for rebound. But I would say this: it doesn't mean that rebound, it means the good news or something like that. It all comes to how do you structure your investment approach and how do you manage the risk.
All right, thank you so much, Dipo. So how do we detect a market bottom before it is ready to rebound? Are there any indicators or hint to detect the bottom? So this is a question by Zulkifli.
I would say it's rather hard to really know when is the bottom. Okay, I would say it's rather hard. Okay, it's rather hard to really understand the bottom. Okay, because to be honest, no one really knows when is the bottom. Okay, no one. Okay, you will only know whether it is on the low side or whether it is on the high side, but you'll never know when is the bottom. Okay, you will never know. Okay, like I said, if you say such things like, you know, I knew it is the bottom, so you are presenting hindsight bias. Okay, so you should fix yourself on that. Okay, you should fix yourself on that thinking. Okay, but at the end of the day, if you want to come back saying that what kind of indicators you can look at to know whether the price is having, I wouldn't say bottom, I would say it's like having a good support. Okay, having a good capital flow at the very least to, you know, support it at this minimum price, something like this. Okay, so most of the time you can just look at the technical chart. Okay, you can look at the technical chart. There are a lot of indicators, like you can find the support resistance line. Okay, you can find some of the good indicators. Like if you really want to look at what are the stocks that are going to rebound, perhaps you can look at like whether have they shows like golden cross or something like that on a certain moving average. Okay, or most of the time I'll just look at the support line. So that is like the crucial thing for me to, detect, not to say bottom, but to say like having a strong support. At the very least, I know that it will have lower probability to break through that support level, that price level, something like that.
Right. Well said. One follow-up question by Zulkifli is, how do we avoid or reduce hope analysis?
Okay. Now this is a very different thing. Hope analysis. Can I clarify?
Okay, let me clarify. I think hope analysis means that, we pray, we hope the price rebound or something like that. I think that's what I meant. I think that's what he meant.
Okay. Well, this is a very different one. But okay. I'll just share on my own experience. Okay. Of course, most of the time I don't really have this action. Like for example, I'm hoping for it to grow or something like that. I don't really have this kind of action. Most of the time, I'll just feed it with justification, like fundamentals or technicals and all this stuff. Because you gotta know, although if we talk it on raw, the stock market, the prices, what are the main factors that actually affecting the prices? Okay, so at the end of the day, it's the expectation. Okay, the demand and supply expectation that actually affecting the prices. Okay, so when you look at that plainly, right? So you were able to understand that it's just the way how you analyze the supply side and also the demand side on the investor's mindset. Okay, so when you look at a particular information, so like for example, let's say you look at, I always like to use this Maybank example, because most of us here know Maybank for sure. So if you look at Maybank, then when you think that this company is good, right? So the next question you should ask is like whether this piece of information is actually being perceived by others. And how will it is perceived by others? Like, will they think it as a very bullish thing, just as how your expectation as well? Or will they just think that this thing will be just a small potato things, which is actually common known by the market all over? So this is how I view stocks and how I view investment approach when I analyze every particular stocks of my own portfolio. Okay, so and then from there I'm able to find whether when they come down in price, I will always have this effort prepared. I really make my own homework. Okay, I prepare out. I say that okay, I'm not worried at all. Even if it comes down in price, I can be even more happy because it comes down in price. I can just tambah, I can just add on for my portfolio. So that is, I think, the way to reduce and avoid hope analysis or hope investments. Okay.
Right. The next question is by Sing Hawk. When do you think is the best time for investors to leave the market?
Okay, I think this question, it has certain uncertainty on that. Meaning to say, I think what he meant for leave the market, it's like when is the time for you to sell, your position and all this stuff. Okay, so I will always say like this. Since you make up your investment journal, right? Okay, you should always have your own expectations on the stocks. Okay, based on their fundamentals or based on their technical, you should already know what kind of price you should just TP out. Okay, you should just take profit. Okay, so at the end of the day, it can be just like following your own investment journal. Okay, you can just, when you look at the price, it reached to your expected pricing, so you can just take it out, take profit. It doesn't have any wrong to it because it is the right thing to do, for you to just secure your return, to secure your profits. It is the right thing to do. Okay, it doesn't have any wrong on it. Okay, but when it comes to approach, okay, like how do you see it? Okay, this is like you have to learn it from experience. Okay, if let's say I would have to share some of the approach that I have, most of the time, like I said just now, one of the approaches is that if let's say I was trading on speculative stock, when I see the price goes up to top volume on that day of the trading markets, then I will know immediately. I will say that I'll tell myself then for the next few couple of days, I will monitor it closely. If I find a good price to sell, I will immediately sell it. Yeah, so that is like my view on speculative stock, because when it goes up to top volume, when it goes to like top 20 volume in KLSC, you can see top 20 volume, top turnover, something like that. When it goes up to that, then immediately you know, like it is not a good thing, because people it actually attracts a lot of eyeballs from the markets already. So the market's having a high expectation on it. So not a good thing to hold it anymore. Just sell it. Okay, since you already had the high side, high expectation means high price already. So right now you should just sell it. Take the price at the higher side of the pricing. Okay, and also the other approach that I commonly use is if let's say I was investing in fundamental stocks. Okay, usually I will pair with a technical analysis as well. Okay, if let's say this fundamental stocks is not that high certainty, okay, it's not that high certainty, meaning to say it's not like a sure thing for me. So I will use technical analysis to analyze the capital flow and analyze the supply and demand. Okay, from there, if let's say, like for example, I found that they are having depth cross, okay, EMA 25 to EMA 50. I found that it has depth cross, so immediately I'll just cut off my position, probably like at least 50%. That is the way that how I manage my own risk management. Okay, so it is one of the approach, but you know, it can never be a one for all. You know, you will have to have a lot of different approach, a lot of different weapons under your own mindset. You know, then from that, when you're dealing on different kind of a situation, you should just know what kind of a skill or what kind of approach you should use. Something like this.
All right, thanks, Thibault. Let's
Right.
do one last question. Yeah. So why is behavioral finance important?
Okay. As I mentioned in presentation, behavioral finance is very important because it helps you to understand yourself more. It helps you understand yourself more because honestly speaking, we will definitely have human error. Okay, you will definitely have that one particular day, you just have a bad day. Okay, and then somehow, no matter what kind of trades or investment you make, it just makes you, you know, you keep on losing and losing. Okay, so you always have this kind of thing. Okay, human being human, we'll definitely have human error. So the thing is, in order for you to consistently perform in the market, then you should know about behavioral finance, because you will then study on your own behavior. Okay, study on your own behavior, and then able to find some of the flaws and try as best as you can to just twist it or to make it, to modify it. So at the end of the day, like for example, I mentioned some of the confirmation bias. Okay, there's a lot of investors, they have this kind of bias. Okay, they will always come to me saying that, hey, bro, I have this best investment. You know what, I'll tell you everything. And then at the end of the day, I ask them, like, have you considered about this risk? Have you considered about that risk? They say, no, it's not a big problem. I would think that my idea would be the best one, something like that. So that means that you're actually presenting a confirmation bias. And if you know about behavioral finance, then when you say such things, then you're aware. You know, you know that, hey, am I presenting confirmation bias? Am I, you know, ignoring some of the potential risks? So now you are back to your drawing board. Now you're back to your drawing board, and then you try to figure out, is there any potential risk? You try to just counter it, but try to just complain to it on your own development approach. And at the end of the day, you're able to counter it on each objection, then that shows that you already make your risk management. That shows that you have planned out well for your investment strategy. Yeah. So that is why behavioral finance is very important, because it helps you to understand yourself more and helps you to consistently perform in the market.
All right. Thank you so much, Thibault, for addressing the Q&A and also presenting on the topic. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you, Shane.